Welcome to the talk this morning. Thank you for joining us. Today I will give you a little bit of an insight to how we implemented Odoo for the chemical industry in order to have a streamline of operations and ensure the compliance in implementing those processes. So a little bit of a background to myself. My name is Nadia Pranic. I'm head of manufacturing at Much Consulting with 6 years of experience in implementing ERP systems. I joined Much 2 years ago, and with Much we have an Odoo Gold partner in Germany. We are consulting our customers on implementing processes with a really big focus on process automation. We have around 80 consultants and engineers fluent in German and English, and with those 80 consultants we implemented over 200 Odoos in EU and US. So before I start with our presentation, I will give you a little bit of time to scan our QR code. It's a form where you can fill in your information to get the slides afterwards, or if you have additional questions which don't pop up today, you can just use the code, fill in, and contact us. I will just give you a little bit of time for that. Okay, and let's start. So when our customer approached us last year, we already know about some challenges that the chemical industry was facing throughout the past years. One of the big challenges is the increasing energy prices, the geopolitical instability, such the Ukrainian war, and such occurrences have a deep impact on the supply chains, which has also then an impact how the pricing for the energy is coming up. And this is one of the big hurdles that the chemical industry has nowadays. The second one is the increasing labor costs. For example, in Germany we have a shortage of qualified staff. So until 2030 we have the number of 9,000 additional people needed for, like IT specialists needed in order to sustain the needs of the industry. And this is also having an impact on the increased labor costs. And of course, the third part, which is also one of big challenges that not only the German chemical industry is facing, but even more corporates or companies around the world, is new and existing regulation like REACH, like the CO2 modifications that need to be done in order to have the sustainability that is needed in order to work efficiently. The consequences of those 3 points, of course, is declining production in the existing companies that are in the chemical industry, and the second part, of course, throughout increased competition through import from outside of Europe. With our customer, it was immediately known that they need a platform which can sustain the agility of the processes that are needed in the chemical industry, and in order to stay competitive with all the companies that are competing in the market. And in order to be agile, we also want to be more efficient, save time, and reduce direct and indirect costs on the long run. Basically, we focus our implementation on 4 big points that are recipe management, integration, handling the hazardous goods, and handling the in and outbound. With recipe management, we had a hurdle to that within the chemical industry, all the formulation have to be really precise in order to be compliant with what they're offering to their customers. We had to track all the raw materials, and of course we had to be able to adjust the raw materials that are used for the recipes. For the integrations, we had to be able to integrate machines that are already existing within the customer warehouses. Therefore, we needed a platform which is able to integrate not only modern machines which are usually working with APIs, but also old machines which are using older mechanism. With handling hazardous goods, it's, I think, pretty obvious that we needed to make it possible that all the raw materials that are used within the receipt and in the manufacturing, we are able to label them as the hazardous goods and also have the proper quality checks that are making it possible that those hazardous goods are checked appropriate and labeled after the quality check. And final point is the handling in inbound and outbound. As with the regulation that are intact, we have to have the possibility that this labeling of the raw materials that we are receiving and the labeling of the finished goods is done appropriately how the regulations are set up, and of course that we are able to have the possibility to show that the compliance is still up, not only for us as the producer, but also all our vendors that we are using for raw materials are also compliant. For this, to make sure that the customer can handle all those operations digitally, we proposed the implementation of Odoo. For this, it was obvious because with Odoo we already had a comprehensive functionality with already existing apps like the manufacturing, like the quality management, so we didn't have to start from scratch. We already have functionalities that are in standard there and just needed at some points a little bit of tweakment or enhancement of the already existing functionality. One big point, of course, was the scalability, because every company is growing throughout the time, so you need a system which is going to be able to handle that growth, and Odoo was for sure the safe chosen here. Then with adaptability and flexibility, we made sure that all the processes that are already really dynamic in the customer branch, with Odoo we have a possibility to compare it to make sure that the processes are being possible to digitalize and adapt to the already existing ones. Then we have the usability, so it's also very important that the users are able to use the Odoo system without having to invest too much time to get to know the system, because Odoo has a user-friendly interface. It was immediately accepted by the users, and the next part was the integrations with all the machines and the CADs was also one point that won over the customer to use Odoo. And as a final point, we have data security and hosting, which was also important as the customer is in the EU. We had to make sure that it's GDPR compliant, and therefore it was already covered by Odoo in standard. When we implemented the system for our customer, we made sure that we focus on the big 4 apps that were Odoo manufacturing, purchase, quality, and inventory. Of course, we implemented also other apps like employee, like timesheeting, like attendance, but those 4 apps were the core apps that were used for the daily processes. So with Odoo manufacturing, we made sure that we implement the recipe management using the BOMs that are already existing. Then we had a multi-level manufacturing, which also already reflected with the multi-level BOMs that are already existing in Odoo. Batch management and documentation were also big topics that we could use already from the get-go just by using the Odoo manufacturing app. For Odoo purchase, we also implemented supplier management and certificate tracking. We built up additional enhanced modifications that use the standardized functionality by just adding up new functionalities in order to have the possibility of this certification tracking and a little bit of enhanced supplier management in order to rate your vendors and have a certain compliance management for your vendors. For Odoo quality, we have implemented batch analysis at all stages, so starting from the receipt of the raw materials till the end where you have your finished good, which is then delivered to your customers. Of course, we have implemented a consistent batch documentation. We have this safety environment management with all the labelings that are needed for the chemical industry, and we have also implemented that a laboratory information can define within the management system, so all the information that you get from your laboratory after the analysis, you can implement in the quality check and have this document right away and have for possible audits afterwards. And finally, with Odoo inventory, we have implemented the possibility that all the dangerous goods that we have in our inventory are categorized properly, that we all know have the whole specification of those dangerous goods, and of course, with the dangerous goods, you have also regulation how you do the waste management, and that's also implemented within the Odoo inventory. And of course, final part is the lot expiration tracking. So all of the lots that are in the inventory had to be tracked in order to have an overview what is expired and what's still good. So let's start with bill of materials as recipe. We use the bill of material in order to reflect what's the recipe that is used within the customer's daily business. We have implemented that we have a specific details like what quantity is being used, what is being transferred from what warehouse was it transferred, and in what packaging it was. Then we also made sure that they can use different kind of variation of a unit of measurements, because you have not only kilograms but a variety of measurements that you are using within one recipe. And we also implemented that you have the possibility to define what's your scale that you're using, and of course, how is the labeling for the finished good, what is the quantity of the finished good. Everything is being made via one manufacturing order, so you don't have to necessarily write any information out of Odoo. Of course, we also made sure that the percentage is displayed within the manufacturing order, because with recipes, you sometimes are also working with percentages. Therefore, we also implemented that part. We didn't just added new fields or customized the manufacturing orders, but we use already existing manufacturing features. So for resource management, we use the work orders planning in order to make sure that the people can plan the shifts, that over hours are also implemented into planning, so you know how many people are doing over hours, and accordingly for you to shift schedules if that's needed. And of course, then that also has an impact on your payroll and wages that you're paying to your employees. For packaging, it's for our customer, it was also a big topic. Therefore, the packaging on its own already was reflected within the bill of materials, and was always a separate manufacturing order. You had we implemented that an automatic lot transfer is happening as soon as packaging is done and being used for the finished good that is mixed within the machines on sites. Of course, also with packaging, we made sure that the traceability is fulfilled and always there as an information if needed. Next part is the integrations. So our customer had machines that were mixing up the batches of finished goods based on the recipes that were already existing within Odoo as bill of materials. The machines were working based on JSONs that were exported in order to give the machine instruction how the recipes are mixed, and you had the JSON being imported after the mixing was done with the actual numbers of what raw materials were used and what percentage, and how it and of course making sure that we can handle the stock differences and make it easier that we also have from the machine logging for the errors that were happening throughout the process. So if, for example, if the needed material is not on stock or not used, we already had an error log and could define why the batch is not as it should be. We implemented it with our self-developed integration hub. So we made sure that we have one interface where you can have an error log, not only error log, but also user log. So you, if you look on the screenshots on the bottom, you already see that we have the time stamps when it was done, and if you open up the log, you can also see what was mixed. So you always can see what batches were done. In the error log, if you open up, you will see what the machine is telling you what error happened during that mixture at that particular timestamp. Then we have the handling of hazardous goods. So it was important because of the variety of regulations. We had to make sure that all the hazardous goods are labeled properly, and of course the traceability within the inventory is possible. We made a much custom module for this, so we made sure that for this customer we create an ADR label for every receipt that is created within Odoo if the receipt has any kind of hazardous goods. In order to have an ADR label, we also added the possibility that a product can be labeled as a dangerous good within Odoo, where you add all the information like the ADR class, what is the UN number, and so on, which is then also prompted in the label as soon as it's received. Therefore, we made it sure that every time a dangerous good is received, you are able to just print out the label without handling it manually. The system is doing it for you. And then as the final point, the handling of in and outbound. As the final part for our customer, it was important to have a handling of HS codes and country of origin, because that was also mandatory to be out-labeled on the delivery slip of the finished good. We also had to display net and gross weight, and on every delivery line, so every finished product line had to have displayed the weight and where it's coming from and the HS code for the exportation guidelines. For Europe specific, we also had to add special texts, so to make sure that when you look at the delivery slip, you can identify if the receipt, if the finished good is outside of Europe, is handled outside of Europe or inside of Europe, and that's always declared on every delivery slip to make sure that we are within the regulation. Also, if you look on the screenshot, you see not only that every line has the weight, we also made sure that at the end of the delivery slip, a summary of your delivery has the whole weight and the gross weight. Also, we make sure that the lot and expiration dates are tracked based on FAFO specifications. So you have a special requirement for dangerous good that based on weight and the classification of the dangerous good, you have to have labels in your storage. And those labels are also created as soon as they are handled within the inventory. You also have, we implemented the possibility that as soon as you create a quality check, you also create a certificate of analysis. So as soon as your personnel that is qualified to do the quality check is giving a thumbs up, you are able to download it. Your certificate also is having the product number, the date of the quality check, and it's also having the specification what was checked in order to have it prepared in case that you are audited. So to summarize it up, with our already existing Odoo standardized apps like Odoo Purchase, Inventory, Manufacturing, and Quality, in combination with our knowledge that we built up together with working with our customer, and now our pre-made solutions, we are ready to offer this also for other customers in the chemical industry in order to give them a possibility to use Odoo to integrate their already used processes and also optimize the processes for future growth. Thank you so much for your attention, and I think we can now switch to questions. Oh, sorry. Sure. I, I do, maybe you can just come here. It's a little bit difficult to listen to.
My question is there a connection with the shipping?
It would be possible to extract that the label that is already created is also sent out with the shipping document.
And to choose the UN code, like on the shipping, what we ship as dangerous goods, it's not yet.
Not yet, but it would be possible. We made we coded in a possibility to have it as an add-on.
Okay, and current Odoo is not doing that. If we have connection with FedEx and we need to ship dry ice, for example, can we choose the UN code and?
I'm not quite sure because our customer had his own shipment methods, so he doesn't use the Odoo standards for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have another question for you. Based on which Odoo version did you code it first?
For 17. We have also 16, but 17 was the original one.
So for the moment I have no other question.
If there are no other questions, feel free to come over to our booth. We have really good coffee and let's chit chat about it. Thank you so much.
I think you have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. How well is Odoo suited for chemical processes out of the box?
Like 90% is still standard. It was just addition of the labeling that it's created automatically and the quality checks had to be enhanced. So already in standard 90% is covered. It's just minor tweaks in order to have a little bit more detailed and higher level quality checks. You're welcome.
So yeah, I still have
Okay,
no question left.
so thank you so much.